Hello there and welcome to Obi-Wan Studios. My name is Justin, and for today's LEGO Star Wars set review, I have a set that's been a little bit controversial in the community, but I have to admit it's one that I've been a bit excited about. The 75442 Ultimate Collector Series Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter. This set released on May 1st, 2026 for $250. It comes with 1,809 pieces and 2 minifigs, being the Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, I say the set's been a little bit controversial just because I feel like the LEGO Star Wars community is suffering from a bit of Mandalorian fatigue. 2026 has been such a heavy year for sets based on the Mandalorian and the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So to get the May 4th UCS set also based on the Mandoverse, I can understand why some people are just feeling that fatigue. However, personally, I just think that scene in the Book of Boba Fett where Din gets his N1, flies it through Beggar's Canyon, it was such a beautiful callback to Episode 1 and Anakin racing the pod racer. It really made me fall in love with his version of the N1 and the fact that you get that prequel association, which I absolutely love. Personally, I'm kind of excited to get what hopefully will be a really awesome UCS version of his N1 Starfighter, and hopefully this is a little bit of a preview as to what we could expect a future UCS N1 based on Episode 1, maybe with young Anakin piloting it. I think that would be really awesome. Fingers crossed LEGO will eventually do that. When it comes to the set's box art, it's that typical all-black UCS style of branding. We have the N1 flying on the front of the box, looking fantastic. I can just hear the sound of those engines. And then we have a little bit of an orange hue behind it as well. Definitely very reminiscent of Tatooine. Turning to the right side of the box, we have another look at the N1 as if it was flying away, along with the words Ultimate Collector Series, and then on the top of the box, more of a front-on look at the build too. And when it comes to the back of the box, we see the build placed on the display stand. You get a look at that display plaque, along with the Mandalorian and Grogu minifigs. We have the set's dimensions and some different shots of both the build and the N1 in universe. All standard stuff, but it makes for what I think is a pretty good looking box, all things considered. And now the only thing left to do is just unseal the N1. Unsealing the set, here is a look at the display plaque, which comes loose in the box, and I'm not a fan of that at all, especially when the instructions manual and sticker sheet come in a protective sleeve. How hard would it have been to throw the plaque in there too, or in its own sleeve, just to protect it a little bit more? As for the sticker sheet, yeah, it's quite big for a $250 UCS set, I think, and you'll hear me rant about that later on. Giving you guys a quick look at the instructions manual, like we've come to expect with UCS sets, there's lots of great information inside about the N1 in universe, concept art, and words from the design team. All stuff that make it feel extra special and live up to that Ultimate Collector Series name, in my opinion. The first page is titled Anything But a Pile of Junk, referencing what Din says when Peli first shows him the disassembled N1 Starfighter. I also love the yellow sections on the pages because I think it was a really cool nod to the original N1 Starfighter's color scheme, as talked about on the next page, a pre-Empire classic. The page beside it references the modifications that were made to make the N1 a worthy replacement of the Razor Crest, and then we have one page from the LEGO Star Wars design team talking about how they got extra reference shots from Lucasfilm when designing the N1, and lots of other insight to the build's design, followed then by some shots from in-universe, and then some concept art from the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and then finally we have the instructions for the build. I just personally really love this stuff with UCS sets, and I do really appreciate the effort that goes into it. Loose inside of the box as well are 2 pipe pieces, and the windshield piece thankfully does come in its own protective bag. Then there were 16 numbered bags in total. This is a set that I'm just really looking forward to building, so I'm going to just take my time and enjoy the building process, and I will continue the review once the N1 is all done. All right. That's better. The N1 is all complete, and I mean, wow. When I first heard the rumor that we were getting a UCS Mandalorian's version of the N-1, I thought it was going to be super interesting how the design team actually approached doing an N-1 Starfighter in UCS form. Were they going to keep it a smaller, just very detailed, more akin to a minifig scale sort of build for the N1, or were they going to make something that's more impressive and just this really monster of a display piece? And that is what they did. And it's one thing to know the set's dimensions, like it says on the back of the box, but to actually see this build in person, quite honestly, I am rather blown away. And on the surface, at least, I am absolutely in love with this set. I think it is so awesome. I think it's refreshing to get something just kind of new and different. I feel like we've had a lot of original trilogy UCS sets lately, a lot of remakes as well. And this, to me, is just extremely cool. But you know what? I get that it isn't for everyone, but I'm definitely a big fan of The Mandalorian, and this is one that I'm just so excited, and I think it's become one of my favorite sets overall in my collection. But the set definitely has some issues and some things where Lego, quite honestly, I think really dropped the ball in terms of the quality and really did this set some injustice, which we'll get into as we move on throughout the review. But the set, as I mentioned, is quite large. It is definitely nowhere near minifig scale. I'll give you guys some B-roll where you see this next to the play scale version of the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter that came out a couple of years ago. That is pretty close to actually being minifig scale. You can see that this, I think, is at least double, if not greater in size compared to that one. But I am so happy that Lego just decided to make a really awesome, cool looking display piece and didn't stick with it being minifig scale. I think this is way cooler. It looks so awesome. At least I think it's super, super cool. All right, let's take a quick look at our minifigs, starting off with the Mandalorian. This is a slightly updated version of him for 2026 for the Mandalorian and Grogu Wave. The helmet print looks great, as we've come to expect, and underneath it we have Din Djarin's face. I do think it is weird though that Lego doesn't always include a hairpiece for characters who wear helmets, so there's no way to display his face where it would look good. In a UCS set, come on Lego, include that hairpiece. The printing for his armor looks great. The arm print for him always looks so fantastic. I really do love those details for the Mandalorian. We get a nice back print as well underneath the cape, and then the newly updated leg print with the addition of foot printing. It's just a really nice step in the right direction for the Mandalorian's quality, and I do appreciate this little refresh for his design. And then we have Grogu, who's also newly updated. We have a new body mold for him, and it is utter perfection. I genuinely don't think they could really improve Grogu's design at this point. Maybe a little bit of a back print, as we only get front printing for him. That's one area that could have made him a little bit better, but otherwise it's just such a fantastic design and makes that old one kind of look a little strange now, although it was certainly fine for the time. This one just really looks like Grogu now. I really do love it a lot. Now, both of the minifigs in the set are not exclusive. They are ones that you can find in other Mandalorian sets, and I don't know, personally, I am someone who enjoys getting exclusive minifigs out of UCS sets, so even like an exclusive Peli minifig would have been cool, or just something to make it a little bit more special, like different printing or something like that, to make one or both of the minifigs exclusive, but I get that that might be an unpopular opinion. Placing the minifigs back on the display stand, and one thing that I just cannot unsee is how when you place Grogu on it, he's always going to be off-centered with an extra stud beside him. I don't know why the decision was made to do it this way when I think a jumper plate would have been the perfect solution. He would be centered, there would be no extra stud showing, and it's just something now that I can't unsee every time I look at the display stand. Just a really weird design choice. And between the minifigs, we have the display plaque. The printing quality is nice, as you would expect, and in general, it looks good. However, there is one small detail on it that isn't 100% accurate to the source material. The max speed is listed as 1100 kilometers per hour, but that is for a regular N-1 Starfighter, and the Mandalorian's is modified to be faster. You know, that's kind of the whole thing about it. So it really needs a plus sign, greater than sign, something to indicate that it can go faster than the max top speed of a stock N-1. For details on a display plaque, it's something that I just really do think matters. When it comes to the display stand for the N1, it's nice and tiled off and it feels very sturdy. There's never been a time where I've had the set and it's felt remotely kind of off balance or unstable, so it does the job very well. And the way I've got it displayed currently, it's flying along kind of at a banked angle, which I think just looks absolutely fantastic. However, you can also choose to display it in a different way. You can have it so that the N1 is forward facing you, kind of flying at you, so to speak, and it's got a little bit of a tilt to it as well, where the nose is slightly downward, so you can kind of look at all of the detail on the top of the Starfighter. And this also, I think, looks very, very good. The thing that really, I feel like, will determine how most people display the set is actually the space you're choosing to display it on, because it is quite a long set. So if you have enough space to actually have the tail sticking out that much, like it's almost past my shoulders here on the table, then you might choose to display it this way. But personally, for me, I just think the sideways angle, like it's flying along, a little bit of a bank going on there, and then with the more exposed engine with the more detail kind of facing out towards you, this personally is the way that I'm going to display it. And I think the angle, it just looks a bit more lively, a bit more animated. If it was level, it would just be almost too static like a model, but this just makes it feel just a little bit more like action going on the way it's displayed, and I really do like it a lot. So I think from that kind of aesthetic display piece standpoint, it looks really, really good. All right, now moving on to the N1 build itself, and as I already mentioned, I just think this thing looks so incredible. In person, it is quite impressive looking, and the photos online I don't think really do it justice, especially when it comes to the drum lacquered silver pieces that we get on the front of the N1 Starfighter. It looks so fantastic. It makes this set pop and really stand out, I think, in a LEGO Star Wars collection. And if LEGO was going to make a UCS version of the N1, whether or not it's from Episode 1 or based on the Mandalorian, if they didn't do the drum lacquered silver pieces on the front just to make it shine and really look like the N1 should, then I just don't think there'd be any point in doing it at all. And early on, when the set was unveiled, I saw some complaints that people had where they said the entire thing should have been done in drum lacquered silver. But when you look at the source material, like even right from the Book of Boba Fett, the first time you really see this N1 Starfighter, you can clearly tell that the front of it has that chrome shine to it like an N1 should, but then where the yellow pieces would be on the body, that's kind of like a more worn style of gray metal. And I think the effect really works in having the drum lacquered silver on this version of the N1 where it should be, and then all of the parts where it should have been yellow are done in the light bluish gray. You know, of course you have a little bit of yellow done in stickers, which we'll get to, but I think this approach was 100% the right way to go about it. And it looks fantastic. I think it's absolutely perfect in terms of that color scheme. You even have some stickers kind of up in this midsection here just to kind of help try and create that shape between the light bluish gray pieces and the drum lacquered silver. And it all works. It all looks very, very good. It's not totally chrome like the original version of the UCS N1 Starfighter, but that effect is still certainly there. And I do think it looks really, really fantastic, especially in person. It's really awesome. When it comes to the design of the wings, I think it was done very well. I like the way you have these two sections that combine to create the entire shape, and I do also like the balance between the amount of stud showing and the tiled off pieces. I think it looks really good. All of the little gaps you have at the front look nice and proportionate too. Honestly, from the shaping of the nose where you have the two forward laser cannons all the way to the ends of the wings where the engines are, I think their design was pretty much nailed. And speaking of the engines, on the outside of the wings we have the two main engines. At the front there is a beautiful drum lacquered silver intake section which makes them really pop with a printed intake piece as well. Now the left engine has a lot more covering to it. It looks more flight worthy for lack of a better way of describing it. And then the right engine is a lot more exposed where you can see bits of the actual engine inside. You get a good look at a cool recolor of the Darksaber blade there for part of the frame of the engine, along with another sword which I believe is from Lord of the Rings, which makes up that top frame section, but it's just really cool to see those parts being used in this sort of way, and lots of great detail inside of that right engine. Both engines have the same design for the ends with some light transparent blue representing the thrust, and then the same antenna piece from the Playscale N1 Starfighter sets on the very ends too, which I just think is a really cool nod to those older designs. Now the N-1 shape in general is very aerodynamic and smooth, but I think the way the build was designed, that really translates. I like the overall shape of it quite a lot, and there are relatively little studs on the rest of the body of the N-1 as well, which I really do appreciate the designer going that direction with it. And there are relatively little gaps as well in terms of all of the different parts and angles that are kind of done to create the overall shaping. The fact that it looks this solid, I think is just very impressive. On the left side, we have another really interesting parts usage in the Super Battle Droid arms, giving for this really cool looking exposed section. I just love how that looks. And then on the body as well, we have some stickers on both sides, giving nice detail to the hull, but with some brutal color matching, which I'll get into a little bit more later on in the review. Moving on to the cockpit, we have a really lovely windshield piece for it. It looks so good, but you know what isn't lovely is that you have to place a sticker on it, which made for a terrible building experience and is honestly just unacceptable to be a sticker in a UCS set in my opinion. That should always be printed. Now to access the cockpit in a perfect world, it would slide forward just like in Universe. However, you just take it off and place it on the jumper plate in front, and I just think that was the trade-off to get the hull looking as good as it does. There was just no room for that mechanism to be added into the design. The inside of the cockpit I think looks pretty good. The ingot pieces for the chair add a nice texture. I like the design of the controls and the instrument cluster sticker as well in the center. It could have used though some more stickers, I hate to say it, for the interior along the sides, just for some more buttons and lights like we see the N1 has in Universe. It does feel just a little bit plain to me personally. Behind the cockpit, we have the astromech docking port, which has been converted for Grogu. I love the shaping of this section, how it angles towards the tail. I just think it looks really good. Now, Grogu fits inside of his pod as you would expect, and you think Din would fit in the cockpit just fine as well. However, if you place him in normally, the windshield won't fit back on, so you do have to lay him down, which is kind of crazy for a UCS set that he can't fit in the cockpit just sitting down, especially when it is so much larger than minifig scale. Either way, because the build is so large, I personally don't like how it looks having the minifigs inside of it. I just think it looks kind of weird. So it's not that big of a deal, but still something I just thought was a little odd. Moving underneath the cockpit, here's a look at that third lower engine. It's got a great design and looks nice and proportionate to the rest of the Starfighter. You again see just a little bit of the light transparent blue there for the thrust, and it just helps make the engine stand out just a little bit more. When it comes to the tail, I absolutely love the way all of these pieces slope together to create that shape. However, as a result, there is a bit of a large gap that's created on each side, which depending on the way you look at it, you can see through it. So I can see some complaints being made for this area and just the way the gaps are, but I do think it was a decent trade-off in order to get the shape looking as good as it does. And then we have some stickers which add some nice detail, but the quality, the color matching, absolutely horrible. They look just so bad. And then just before the end of the tail, we have kind of the framey skeleton section of it. Just all of the pipe detailing that's done in there. The way that looks, I think, was done very well too. And then at the very end of the tail, the one kind of thing I don't like is just the parts usage of the very end piece. It's the same one that you got on the playscale version of the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter. I just don't like the kind of more softer rubber tip of the tail. I get it's probably to make it more durable than if it would have been the hard plastic brick kind of form, but at the same time, you can just kind of tell that it's not perfectly straight. It's got a little bit of almost waviness to it just by the fact that it's a softer material. So personally, that's just one piece that I've never been a fan of. Turning the N1 over to give you guys a look at the underside of it. At the front, we have some pieces which create the underside of like the nose of the Starfighter and make it look good from that dead on perspective. Underneath the main body of the Starfighter, it's nice and tiled off and angled as well to create that shape. There's nothing too crazy going on for extra detail underneath the N1, but I definitely think everything they needed to do was done there. Now, while the N1 is certainly a display piece, if you really wanted to, you can take it off of the display stand and swoosh this thing around. Holding the build with one hand feels incredibly solid. Nothing feels like it's gonna fall off if I shake it or anything like that. The ends of the engines with the antenna pieces, sure, that's fragile, but that's just understandable. But if you really wanted to, you can totally swoosh this thing around like you're flying through Beggar's Canyon. It feels very comfortable to actually do so. The build is just really well designed from that structural standpoint. Okay, so up until this point in the review, I've only had a couple of nitpicks with this set as a whole. I genuinely really do like it quite a lot, and the designer behind it, I think, deserves a lot of praise for how good this thing is. I mean, A regular UCS N-1 Starfighter would be a little bit difficult, I think, to make at this sort of scale. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, a lot of kind of complex shapes and the curvature of it. But then to do the Mandalorian's version, it's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more little details, intricacies, and things going on. And they did a very, very good job with it, I have to say. However, there were a couple of times during the review I kind of alluded to an area that just really was not up to standard and let the set down, quite honestly, in my opinion. And it's the quality of the color matching when it comes to the stickers, because it is just so bad. It is absolutely terrible, and I think at this point, it's kind of a big joke. To me, when you look at these stickers, the color of the gray of the sticker is nowhere near close to the color of the gray of the brick. It's almost like the knockoff version of a UCS N-1 Starfighter. When you look at it, because the color matching is so bad, you would expect this from a cheap knockoff. You wouldn't expect this from Lego, but this is the reality that we are in. So to me, the fact that we keep getting sets where the color matching of the stickers is so bad, like looking at the tail section especially, it's brutal. It's kind of pathetic, to be honest. It just kind of seems like to me that Lego doesn't really care to fix it. I don't want to rant too much. That wasn't the plan for this part of the review. And you can probably tell that I'm just getting really frustrated and really passionate about it because I just think it's so pathetic and such a joke. And if I was the designer, I would be so angry that you build this beautiful model and then Lego just slaps some god-awful, ugly stickers on the thing. And I haven't even gotten to the point of that in a $250 UCS set, we get the absolute bare minimum in terms of printed pieces. We get the display plaque, which is printed. Okay, fine. It took Lego forever to actually make that change from it being a sticker. And then we get the intake pieces. Oh boy, thanks Lego. Those are printed. But none of the other pieces, like the windshield one especially, there is no excuse for that. That was not a fun part of the build at all. It sucked, to be honest. I don't know. I really do love this set quite a lot, but something has just got to change with Lego. Like, I couldn't look at this end product, display it to the world, and be proud of it when I see the stickers and think, is that really the best we can do? All right, so do I think the N1 is worth $250? Look, I understand it comes with all of these beautiful drum lacquered silver pieces, and I really do hate using price per piece as a measure of value. 1,800 pieces to $250 though, definitely feels steep if you consider price per piece. But either way, I don't think this set is worth $250. I can't really recommend that you go out and spend the full retail price on this set. It just needed to provide some more value for your money, in my opinion. Printed pieces would have gone such a long way. Instead, we get these brutal color matched stickers instead. Another minifig like Pelly would have been really cool, some exclusive minifigs, something just to give you more value for your money, which I'm not quite feeling with this set. So I think on a bit of a sale, that's when you know if you're really wanting it. I suggest you wait until Lego does put this thing on sale. Then you'll just feel a bit better about your purchase, but that's just my opinion on it. At least $250. I'm not quite feeling that from the N1, although I do really like the set quite a lot. So with all of that said, for the Obi-Wan Studios set rating, the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter is getting a 9.4 out of 10. I really struggled with the rating for this set. I really love the build. I absolutely hate the stickers. Not really feeling the price point either. I felt like a 9 though was too low because of how good the build I personally think is. 9.5 is too high, so 9.4 is what it is getting, and I'm committing to that. Thank you for watching my review on the 75442 Ultimate Collector Series Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter. As always, let me know what you guys think about this set in the comments down below. I get that it's not for everyone. I get that not everyone would have wanted this as the May 4th, 2026 UCS set, but as someone who personally really does love The Mandalorian, generally speaking, and really did love that callback to the prequels when he got his own N-1 Starfighter, the build looks amazing. And I'm going to proudly display this one, and I'm going to have to figure out where I'm going to display it, somewhere up above me once I'm done editing the video. But it's a set that I really do like. And if you guys did enjoy the review, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to my YouTube channel, as those two things just greatly help support the videos that I make. As always, my name is Justin, and I'll see you guys on the next LEGO Star Wars video on Obi-Wan Studios.